All right, so picture this. A kingdom split right down the middle. A legendary king gone, and a new leader stepping up to face incredible odds.
Sounds intense.
It is. We're diving into 2 Samuel chapter 2, a story full of ambition, rivalry, and, yeah, some seriously sharp leadership lessons.
Ah, 2 Samuel. It's like a political thriller, but set in ancient times.
Exactly. And these lessons, they still hit home today, thousands of years later.
Absolutely.
So this chapter, it really sets the stage for, well, kind of a turbulent period in Israel's history. Right?
Yeah, you see the nation like reeling from King Saul's death, and then bam, 2 guys claiming the throne.
Okay, so who are these guys? Let's break it down.
Okay.
We've got David, right, just anointed king of Judah.
Right.
But then there's Ish-bosheth, Saul's son, who gets put forward as king over the rest of Israel.
Talk about a recipe for conflict.
Oh, yeah, big time.
It's inherently unstable, and as the chapter unfolds, you see how quickly this division leads to, well, violence and tragedy.
It's a mess.
It's a mess, and it's like this warning sign flashing, disunity, dangerous, and that feels incredibly relevant even now.
Oh, yeah, totally. So let's get into the events themselves. First, we see David. He's playing it smart. He doesn't just rush out and try to grab the entire kingdom.
He's strategic.
Right. He consults God, gets guidance to go to Hebron, and starts by establishing his rule in Judah.
This is huge. It's not just about seeking guidance before making a major move, although that's huge in itself, but it's about aligning himself with a bigger purpose, something greater than just grabbing power. It makes me think of successful leaders today,
Oh, yeah, totally.
the ones who last, the ones who really make a difference. They often have that same quality, driven by a vision that goes beyond just personal gain.
Yeah, that's so true. It's like they tap into this deeper source of motivation or something. It gives them that extra resilience direction.
For sure.
And in contrast, you've got Abner,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Saul's former general. He's busy trying to solidify Ish-bosheth's claim to the throne.
Abner is a really interesting character. He represents this more pragmatic, almost ruthless approach to leadership.
Cutthroat.
Kind of, yeah. Focused on power, control. He seems willing to use any means necessary to get what he wants. It's a stark contrast to David's approach.
You can feel the tension building already.
Oh, yeah.
And that leads us to the clash at the Pool of Gibeon.
There we go.
Joab, David's general, and Abner's forces, they end up in this showdown. It's like a modern-day rivalry exploding.
But instead of a boardroom.
They're facing off by this ancient pool.
Exactly. And this clash, it's about so much more than just a fight between 2 armies.
Oh, I bet.
It's like a microcosm of how societies break down.
Interesting.
You see how unchecked ambition, this lack of a shared purpose, it can rip apart even close relationships. And it makes you wonder, how often does that happen today in our companies, our communities, where internal competition overshadows the bigger goals, the things that could actually unite us?
Man, that's deep. And the consequences in the story, they're brutal.
Yeah.
Asahel, Joab's brother, gets killed by Abner during this wild chase.
To chase by
A crazy chase. It's heartbreaking. And it really underscores how even what might seem like a small conflict can spiral out of control and lead to devastating, irreversible outcomes.
Absolutely. That moment hits hard because it reminds us that even in the ancient world, these were real people with families, with lives that were cut short by this cycle of violence. And it forces us to consider, where are those cycles playing out in our own lives? Where are we letting ambition or rivalry cloud our judgment, and what's the potential cost?
So here we are, this uneasy truce, but the bitterness and the division, they're still simmering beneath the surface. Makes you realize this story is about so much more than just a power grab.
So much more.
It's a deep dive into the nature of leadership, the consequences of choices, and that fundamental human need for unity and peace.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
This story, it's almost like it's holding up a mirror,
Yeah.
asking us, what kind of leader are you?
Ooh, interesting.
Are you a David, seeking guidance, building consensus? Or are you more like Abner, driven by ambition and playing the power game?
That's such a powerful question. And it's one, honestly, we should all be asking ourselves, regardless of our position or title. Leadership, it isn't just about what's on your business card.
Yeah,
It's about how we influence others and the choices we make when things get tough.
absolutely. And speaking of tough choices, going back to David, it's interesting to see his patience, his focus on unity. It actually pays off.
In the end, yeah.
He doesn't force a showdown with Ish-bosheth. He waits, strengthens his hold on Judah, and lets things unfold.
That's crucial. David, he gets it. Timing and strategy are everything. He's not like diving headfirst into a potentially disastrous fight. He's playing a long game.
Smart.
It's a masterclass in leadership, you know? It's that ability to balance ambition with wisdom and restraint.
It's a great reminder for all of us, I think. In our fast-paced world, it's so easy to get swept up in the race to achieve our goals.
Oh, yeah.
But sometimes, stepping back, assessing the situation, being patient, that's the wisest move.
Couldn't agree more. Patience, it's often seen as passive, but it can be a source of incredible strength. It gives you the space to make calculated decisions, build a solid foundation, and ultimately achieve more in the long run.
Exactly. Picking your battles, knowing when to push forward and when to hold back. This story, it also highlights the importance of unity.
Yeah.
You see how the divided kingdom weakens both sides, fuels unnecessary conflict.
Oh, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. Disunity, it breeds instability. It creates this perfect breeding ground for conflict.
Makes sense.
It's that old saying, a house divided against itself cannot stand.
So true. And that lesson is relevant today as it was back then.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's families, communities, or entire nations,
Yeah.
unity is the key to strength, stability, progress.
Okay, so here's where things get really interesting. If we connect this back to our own lives, we can ask ourselves, where can I be a force for unity? How can I bridge divides and foster collaboration, instead of feeding into conflict?
Those are seriously important questions.
They are.
This story, it's encouraging us to be peacemakers, to find common ground, build bridges instead of walls.
Right, because in the end, true leadership, it's about serving others, making a positive impact, leaving the world a little better than we found it.
I love that. Even though this story is set in ancient Israel, it offers this timeless wisdom we can apply to our own lives. Seek guidance, be patient, strive for unity.
And even when surrounded by conflict and uncertainty, there's always hope for a better future. It's up to each of us to choose the path of peace, understanding, collaboration.
So well said. This deep dive into 2 Samuel, it has been so insightful. It's amazing how these ancient stories can still speak to us so powerfully today.
It really is.
There's this moment in the chapter, it's a powerful one, where Abner, after that clash with Joab's forces, he cries out, "Shall the sword devour forever?"
It's chilling. You can just hear the exhaustion in his voice, right? The futility of endless conflict.
Yeah, it's like he suddenly sees the trap they're all caught in.
Yeah.
How this violence just leads to more violence. And it makes you think, is there any other way?
It's the challenge we're still wrestling with today, isn't it? I mean, look around. The conflicts all over the world, the political divides, even the personal arguments that tear apart families and communities. Sometimes it feels like we're doomed to just repeat those same mistakes, Division and fighting.
Like we haven't learned a thing from history.
But that's the point. We have to learn from these stories. We need to break free from those cycles and find ways to build connections instead of walls.
So how do we do that?
Well, that's where those leadership lessons come in, right? Seeking guidance, practicing patience, and fighting for unity. Those are the tools we can use to navigate conflict in a healthy way to create a more peaceful future.
So it's not about avoiding conflict altogether.
No, not necessarily. It's about approaching it in a way that's productive, a way that leads to understanding and ultimately healing and reconciliation.
And that takes courage, I think.
It does. It takes real courage to step back from our own stubborn positions, to listen to people who see things differently, and to be open to compromise.
It's inspiring to see how even in this story of a divided kingdom with all its complexities and challenges, there's still room for hope. There's room for change, for a better future.
And maybe that's the biggest takeaway. From this deep dive, we all have a role to play in creating that future. We can choose to be peacemakers, to build bridges, and to work towards a world where violence isn't the answer.
So powerful. What does all this mean for you as you go about your life? Are there conflicts or divisions where you could be working towards a more peaceful solution? Remember this wisdom. It's not just for kings and generals. It's for all of us. And maybe, just maybe, by putting these timeless principles into practice, we can each play a part in building a world where unity and peace win out.
That's a beautiful thought. And it makes you realize these stories, they're so much more than just ancient history. They're filled with guidance that can really help us face the challenges of modern life.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, we wrap up our deep dive into 2 Samuel. Thanks for joining us on this journey. We'll be back soon with another fascinating exploration of ancient wisdom and what it means for us today.